Okay, so picture this. A moment, right? A moment in history where humanity, well, we unknowingly stood right at the brink of nuclear war.
A hair's breadth away.
Yeah.
And most people, had no idea it even happened.
That's the incredibly intense story we're diving into today.
We are. We're going to break down the 1983 Soviet nuclear false alarm incident. Our sources, they really paint a picture of a world just teetering.
Teetering, yeah. And the amazing decision of one person that maybe, just maybe, pulled us back.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's set the scene. 1983. The Cold War isn't like some abstract history thing. It's real, it's happening. And U.S.-Soviet relations, they are strained. Really bad.
Well, absolutely. Think about Europe at that time. You had new nuclear missiles popping up, the NATO double-track decision, for instance, Pershing Oz going into West Germany.
Missiles that could hit their targets in, what, minutes?
Just minutes. It was this constant nerve-wracking standoff, a real razor's edge.
And it wasn't just missiles sitting there, was it? There were actions.
Definitely. The U.S. was running these psychological operations, actual military exercises, sometimes secret, near really sensitive Soviet areas.
Like where?
Places like the Barents Sea, Norwegian Sea, Black Sea, Baltic Sea, near the GIUK gap, that crucial naval choke point.
Yeah.
Even flying bombers close to Soviet airspace, then turning back.
Wow. That must have looked incredibly provocative from the Soviet side.
Declassified U.S. documents show it really did. It rattled the Soviet leadership. They were genuinely scared.
And they had reasons, right? I mean, beyond the current tensions.
Yeah, absolutely. They had this historical trauma, the memory of the surprise Nazi invasion in 1941. That was deep-seated.
And Reagan's rhetoric at the time didn't help, I imagine. Evil empire and all that.
Not at all. It fed right into their fears of a surprise American first strike. This led to Operation Ryan, a huge intelligence effort by the KGB.
Ryan, what was that exactly?
It stood for Raketno-Ядерное Нападение, nuclear missile attack. They were desperately trying to gather any scrap of intelligence that might indicate the West was about to launch.
And those new Pershing tests, they felt particularly vulnerable to those.
Extremely. They basically had no effective defense against them because the flight time was so short. It really amplified the sense of paranoia and fear.
Okay, so the background is incredibly tense. Then specific events just pile on.
Right. In September '83, just before our main incident, there's the tragic downing of Korean Airlines Flight 007, a civilian airliner shot down by Soviet jets.
Killing everyone on board, including Americans. That must have sent tensions skyrocketing.
It absolutely did. And then, just a few months prior, in December '82, the first of those Pershing tests actually arrived in West Germany.
So the fear wasn't abstract anymore. The missiles were there.
Exactly. And according to Bruce Blair, who really studied this stuff, the whole Soviet warning system was basically set up to expect an attack and react incredibly fast, like hair trigger fast.
Okay, into this absolute pressure cooker steps. Stanislav Petrov.
Stanislav Petrov, Lieutenant Colonel, Soviet Air Defense Forces. And on the night of September 26, 1983, he's the duty officer.
What was his post?
He's in the Serpukhov 15 bunker. This is the command center for the OCO early warning system. Their eyes in the sky, looking for missile launches.
So his job is basically watch the satellites.
Watch the satellites, yeah. And if they detect an incoming missile attack, specifically ICBMs, those long-range ones report it up the chain.
Yeah.
Immediately.
And then it happens.
It happens. Shortly after midnight Moscow time, the system lights up. Alarms. It's reporting a missile launch from the U.S.
Just one.
First one, then another,
Yeah.
and another. Up to 5 missiles, all apparently heading straight for the Soviet Union.
5 ICBMs. From the U.S., okay. My heart would be pounding out of my chest. The protocol is clear, right? Report it, now.
That's the protocol, that's the doctrine. But Petrov, he waits. He hesitates.
He hesitates. With 5 missiles supposedly incoming, why on earth would he do that?
Well, a couple of things just didn't add up for him. First, basic military strategy. A real U.S. first strike aimed at wiping out the Soviet ability to retaliate. It wouldn't be 5 missiles.
No, it would be.
Nothing.
Everything they had, right? Hundreds. A massive coordinated attack.
Exactly. 5 felt wrong. Too small. Almost tentative. Second, the OCO system itself. It was relatively new technology.
And maybe not entirely trusted yet.
Petrov certainly had his doubts. It had a history of, let's say, glitches. Reliability issues weren't unknown.
So he's thinking, small number of missiles, system known to be buggy.
Right. He says to wait for corroboration for other warning systems like ground-based radar to confirm the launches.
And did they? Did the radar pick anything up?
Nothing. Silence from the ground radar systems. Now, there are Slightly differing accounts about exactly when and how he notified his superiors. But the key thing is, his final report up the chain was that it was a system malfunction, a false alarm.
Against protocol, against the whole Soviet doctrine of launch on warning.
Absolutely. That doctrine was built on the terrifying logic of mad mutual assured destruction.
The idea that if one side launches, the other retaliates immediately and everyone gets wiped out. Grim, but supposed to prevent anyone starting it.
Precisely. So detecting an incoming attack should have triggered an immediate Soviet launch sequence. Petrov's judgment call went directly against that ingrained procedure.
So if it wasn't missiles, what did cause the alarm? What fooled the satellites?
It sounds like something out of science fiction, honestly. It turned out to be a really rare freak alignment of sunlight.
Sunlight.
Yeah, sunlight reflecting off the tops of high-altitude clouds. And because of the specific orbits, the OCO satellites use these highly elliptical paths called Molia orbits. They happen to be in just the right position for this reflection to mimic the signature of missile engine plumes.
That's unbelievable. Just pure bad luck alignment.
Pretty much. They later figured it out and corrected the system, partly by cross-referencing with data from geostationary satellites which have a fixed view.
And Petrov himself, did he explain his thinking later?
He did. He talked about the illogical number. 5 missiles just didn't make sense for a first strike. He mentioned his lack of sort of complete faith in this new system's reliability.
And the lack of ground radar confirmation was key too.
Critical. Even though it's important to note, ground radar back then couldn't actually see over the horizon to detect ICBMs right after launch anyway.
Yeah.
But the lack of any signal from any other system strengthened his gut feeling.
Okay, so the immediate crisis passes. He makes the right call. He must have been hailed as a hero, right? Parades, medals.
You'd think so. And initially, there was some positive feedback. General Votintsev, the commander of missile defense units, the guy Petrov first reported to, apparently praised his actions. Petrov even said he was told he'd get a reward. But then things took a weird turn. Instead of a reward, he actually got reprimanded.
Reprimanded? For what? Saving the world?
For paperwork. Seriously. For not filling out the logbook correctly during the incident, not describing everything according to the regulations.
It cannot be serious paperwork.
That's the story. The reward never happened. Petrov himself figured it was because acknowledging his correct actions would also mean admitting how badly the expensive high-tech warning system had failed.
So basically, celebrating him would have embarrassed his superiors and the scientists behind the system.
It seems to have been the calculation. It highlights the flaws and the immense internal pressure.
What a way to treat someone who might have prevented Armageddon. What happened to his career after that?
It wasn't great. He got moved, reassigned to a less important, less sensitive job. Eventually, he took early retirement.
And the stress must have been immense.
He reportedly suffered a nervous breakdown later on. It's a really stark, kind of tragic outcome for him personally, considering the stakes of that night.
Let's shift perspective a bit. What about the view from the very top, the Soviet leadership? How did they see this, or how might they have reacted?
That's where insights from someone like Oleg Kalugin come in. He was a former high-ranking KGB general, knew the leadership, knew Andropov, who was the Soviet leader then.
And what did Kalugin say?
He spoke about the deep, profound mistrust the Soviet leaders had for American leaders. Real paranoia, fueled by the Cold War, by Reagan's rhetoric.
So they genuinely believed a U.S. first strike was plausible.
Very plausible in their minds. Kalugin argued that if Petrov had reported those launches as genuine, that profound distrust could easily have tipped them into launching their own missiles preemptively. His exact quote was something like, "The danger was in the Soviet leadership thinking, the Americans may attack, so we better attack first."
Chilling. Just chilling to think about. But there's still debate, right, about how close we actually came. It wasn't definitely going to lead to launch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a complex debate. You have Bruce Blair, the nuclear strategy expert, arguing passionately that the system was on a hair trigger. He believed that any confirmed report, even a small one reaching the top leadership, would likely have triggered an almost automatic retaliation, given the incredibly short decision times.
Okay, that's the extremely close call argument. What's the counter-argument?
That comes from scholars like Pavel Podvig. He emphasizes that there were more checks and balances. Petrov's bunker wasn't the final word. There were other layers of military command and political leadership above him who would assess the information.
So Petrov's call was crucial, but maybe not the only thing preventing launch.
Podvig argues that yes. He also suggests Soviet doctrine likely required confirmation of actual nuclear detonations on Soviet soil before they'd unleash a full retaliatory strike, not just a censor warning.
And what does Russia say officially now?
The official Russian Federation stance, stated to the UN, aligns more with Podvig. They maintain that a decision of that magnitude would never, ever rely on just one source of information. It would require confirmation from multiple systems, satellites, radar, intelligence, the works.
But Blair would push back on that.
Blair strongly reiterates that, official doctrine aside, the reality of the intense 83 tensions meant the system was primed for speed above all else. That inherent speed increased the risk of catastrophic error. It just shows how incredibly precarious everything felt.
So this whole incredible story, Petrov's role, it stayed hidden for a long time.
For years. It didn't really come out until 1998, when General Votintsev published his memoirs. Only then did the world start to learn about Stanislav Petrov.
And once the story was out, he did eventually get some recognition. Finally.
Yes, thankfully. Some significant awards started coming his way internationally.
Like what?
He received the World Citizen Award, the Dresden Peace Prize in Germany, the German Media Award. Pretty major stuff.
And even after he passed away.
Yes. Posthumously, he was given the Future of Life Award. His daughter accepted it for him. And at that ceremony, the former UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, spoke about humanity's debt to Petrov's judgment.
That's quite something. Is there anything else, like, commemorating him?
Well, informally, September 26th, the date of the incident, is now often called Petrov Day by people aware of the story.
Despite all this later fame, Petrov himself stayed pretty low-key about it all.
Remarkably so. He always downplayed it. Just said things like, it was my job, or I was just in the right place at the right time.
Humble.
Incredibly. Apparently, his own wife didn't even know the full story, the sheer gravity of what he did that night for almost 10 years afterwards.
Wow, that's amazing. Has this story inspired any, like, adaptations, movies, books?
There's a novel, actually. La Redención del Camarada Petrov, The Redemption of Comrade Petrov. It's a fictional take, but based on these events.
You know, thinking about Petrov making that split-second call with conflicting data under that insane pressure, it really makes you think about how we process critical information in crises, even now.
It does. It almost feels like an early analog example of something we now call disaster informatics.
Disaster informatics? What's that?
Well, the term wasn't around in '83, obviously. But Petrov's situation perfectly illustrates the core idea, the critical role of assessing information correctly when facing a potential disaster. Disaster informatics as a field really grew after big events like the 2004 Asian tsunami, 9/11, Hurricane Katrina.
Okay, so what does it involve today?
It's about using information and technology across all stages of a disaster. Think of it using crowdsourced data from people on the ground via social media, using data mining to spot patterns or needs, building better early warning systems.
So analyzing tweets, satellite images, citizen reports, all that stuff.
Exactly. All aimed at understanding how disasters unfold, how people react, and making our preparation, response, and recovery much smarter and more effective. In a way, Petrov was a one-man, high-stakes disaster informatics system that night, processing confusing signals under extreme pressure.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It wasn't about fancy algorithms for him, was it? It was human judgment staring down a warning light.
It really highlights that human element. Even in our most technologically advanced security systems, that individual judgment can be absolutely crucial.
It shows the incredible weight that can fall on just one person, especially when tensions are high and technology is complex.
It really, really does.
So, wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you, our listener, from this deep dive? For me, it's just how fragile peace can be. How quickly things could have gone wrong based on distrust and a glitch.
Yeah, and it forces you to think about individual judgment in these critical systems, how important it is even when things seem automated.
Absolutely. And maybe it leaves us with a final thought to chew on. How many other moments like this have there been? These unseen close calls, these near misses in history caused by tech failures or bad information that we don't know about.
That is a truly sobering thought. And are our safeguards today, with even more complex tech and ongoing tensions, really robust enough to prevent the next potential near miss?
It makes you appreciate the quiet roles people play, doesn't it? The Petrovs of the world, known or unknown, whose judgment or maybe just hesitation kept catastrophe at bay. Something to really reflect on.